The German artillery shell screamed over Arthur Shilstone's head and detonated 50 yards behind him. He didn't flinch. He kept painting. The Sherman tank in front of him needed shadows. In 4 hours, when dawn broke over the Rhine River and German reconnaissance aircraft made their morning runs, this rubber balloon inflated with bicycle pumps needed to photograph like 33 tons of American steel. The shadow under the left track was wrong. Too uniform. Real tanks created irregular shadows from mud, equipment, the weight distribution. Shilstone dipped his brush in black paint mixed with mud and fixed it. Another shell. Closer this time. The blast wave rippled the surface of the inflatable tank. Private Harold Dahl, holding the tank steady against the wind, looked at Shilstone with wide eyes. "We should move," Dahl said. "Not done yet," Shilstone replied. He had 47 more tanks to finish before sunrise. Somewhere across the Rhine, German intelligence officers were studying yesterday's reconnaissance photographs, counting American divisions, calculating attack vectors. By dawn, they needed to see 2 complete divisions in this field. 2 divisions that didn't exist. 2 divisions made of rubber and paint and lies. If it worked, American soldiers would cross the Rhine 15 miles south against lighter resistance. If it failed, those soldiers would walk into concentrated German fire. If German patrols discovered that the massive American armored force was inflatable toys, the entire deception program would be compromised. Another shell. The ground shook. Shilstone kept painting. This was the Ghost Army's final performance. They had been running this con for 9 months, 20 operations across France and Germany, creating phantom divisions to fool Hitler's Wehrmacht. They had never lost anyone. Tonight, with German artillery ranging their position and enemy patrols active in the area, that record might end. Shilstone finished the shadow, stepped back, examined his work. From 10 feet away, in darkness, it looked perfect. From 10,000 feet up in daylight, through a reconnaissance camera lens, it would look like a Sherman tank preparing to cross the Rhine. He moved to the next tank. Tank number 2 of 698 to go. 4 hours until dawn, the shells kept falling. Arthur Shilstone had designed window displays for Macy's, making cheap merchandise look expensive through lighting and placement. Now he stood in a Normandy field watching 4 soldiers carry a 40-ton tank between them. "This will never work," said Lieutenant Bill Blass. A fashion designer wearing corporal stripes, the soldiers connected an air hose. The tank inflated in 8 minutes. Up close, obviously rubber. From 100 yards, from 10,000 feet through a camera lens, Captain Fred Fox, the unit's commander, gestured at the inflatable Sherman. "That's our audience. German reconnaissance aircraft." "Can they tell it's fake?" Shilstone studied it. The details were remarkable. Rivets, hatches, track treads. From altitude? No. The 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, 100 men recruited from art schools, advertising agencies, Broadway, artists, designers, sound engineers. Their mission was unprecedented: create phantom armies to fool German intelligence. Make Hitler's commanders react to divisions that didn't exist. Their equipment was stranger than their personnel. 200 inflatable tanks, each 85 pounds. Sound trucks projecting recordings of tank movements up to 15 miles. Radio gear to generate fake division communications. Detailed knowledge of American unit insignia to impersonate any division. "First mission tomorrow night," Fox said. "The 2nd Armored moves north to attack. We stay here pretending to be them." "Questions?" "What if Germans get close enough to see the fakes?" someone asked. "Then you're close enough to die," Fox replied. 20 inflatable tanks representing the 2nd Armored Division, while the real division moved into attack positions. Shilstone's team worked through the night. He painted wear and weathering on each tank, making them look used rather than factory fresh. At dawn, German reconnaissance flew over. He resisted looking up. A soldier wouldn't stare at enemy aircraft. He continued working, acting the role. 3 days later, Fox found him. German intelligence reported the 2nd Armored still in position. They had no idea the real division was 20 miles north, attacking from a different direction. Did we save lives? The second armored took objectives with lighter casualties than expected. Shilstone had painted shadows on rubber balloons. Somewhere, because of those shadows, American soldiers who would have died had survived. Strangest feeling he'd ever experienced. By September, they had refined the system. Deployment took 4 hours from arrival to combat ready. Sound trucks synchronized with movement patterns. Radio operators matched division communications signatures. Unit members, wearing appropriate patches, visited towns where civilians might report to German informants. Pattern: arrive after dark. Deploy by dawn, maintain 48-72 hours, vanish before German ground forces investigated. Operation Elephant simulated the entire 6th Armored Division, while the real division moved north to attack Brest. Over 200 inflatable vehicles, Sherman tanks, half-tracks, artillery, the visual signature of an armored division preparing for deployment. Second night, German patrols spotted 2 miles away.
Moving toward them. Maintain deception, Fox ordered.
Combat engineers will intercept. Shilstone continued working. Gunfire in the darkness. Brief, controlled, silence. The patrol had been captured before seeing anything. Prisoners sent to rear areas before they could report. Third day, German reconnaissance photographed their positions. The photos reached intelligence analysts who identified the 6th Armored Division and reported it to German command. Reserves shifted to counter the perceived armored threat. 50 miles north, the real 6th Armored joined the assault on Brest. The city fell. Captured documents showed German intelligence had placed the 6th Armored in Luxembourg. Perfect deception. "Do you ever feel like a fraud?" Blas asked as they deflated the tanks. "Every day," Shilstone replied.
"That's the job."
Not every operation succeeded. Wilt's was sonic deception, sound trucks projecting recordings of armored columns. German listening posts would hear tanks moving, report them, forces would reposition. The weather was wrong. Temperature inversions, humidity, wind, all unfavorable for sound propagation. They deployed anyway. The sound didn't carry. German posts 5 miles away heard nothing. Fox received the report. His expression didn't change, but Shilstone saw the tension. Failed deceptions wasted resources and exposed methods without benefit. If Germans analyzed enough failures, they might develop countermeasures. No sonic operations without ideal atmospheric conditions, Fox ordered. They adapted, coordinated with weather forecasters, learned from failure. But Wilt taught Shilstone something uncomfortable. They were fallible. Illusions could fail. And when illusions failed near enemy forces, people died. The German offensive smashed into American lines in the Ardennes. The Ghost Army, conducting a minor operation north of the fighting, was pulled back immediately. "We need to help," Dahl said as they listened to radio reports of desperate fighting. Fox looked at the map. "Command wants us to simulate reinforcements moving toward the bulge, make Germans think we're rushing divisions to contain them." They deployed on Christmas
Eve in freezing conditions 20 miles from the fighting.
The temperature was below 0. The inflatable tank's rubber became brittle in the cold. 3 split while being inflated. The sound equipment's electronics malfunctioned. The generators kept failing. They improvised. Used heaters to warm the inflatables before inflation. Wrapped sound equipment in blankets. Kept generators running constantly to prevent freezing. The sonic deception barely worked. The recordings of tank columns played, but the extreme cold affected sound propagation unpredictably. Sometimes the sound carried 10 miles. Sometimes 500 yards. German signals intelligence intercepted their radio traffic and reported American reinforcements moving toward the bulge. But ground observers closer to the front heard nothing. The deception was inconsistent, unconvincing. After 5 days, they withdrew. The operation had tied down some German attention, but nothing like their previous successes. "We were supposed to help," Dahl said quietly.
I don't think we did. Shilstone looked at the deflated tanks being loaded onto trucks.
Real American soldiers were dying in frozen forests while the Ghost Army struggled with frozen rubber and malfunctioning electronics. They had tried. The weather had beaten them. "Sometimes conditions don't cooperate," Fox said. "We did what we could." But Shilstone felt the failure. The bulge was when the army needed deception most. The Ghost Army had been unable to deliver. By January, the German offensive was contained and pushed back. The Ghost Army returned to regular operations. But something had changed. They had learned they could fail when it mattered most. The confidence from 15 successful operations had been tempered by one partial failure in the worst conditions. It made them sharper, more careful, more determined that the next operation would succeed. "This is the big one," Fox told them. "Rhine crossing. If we do this right, we shorten the war." The Ninth Army would cross the Rhine on March 24th. The Ghost Army would simulate 2 divisions preparing to cross 15 miles north of the real crossing. If German intelligence believed the fake crossing was the main effort, they would position reserves to counter it. The real crossing would face weakened opposition, Operation Viersen. Everything they had learned over 9 months. Over 600 inflatable vehicles. Sonic deception with river crossing preparations. Radio deception with fake division headquarters coordinating amphibious assault. Physical traces, bridge equipment, supply dumps, staging areas, all within artillery range of German positions across the Rhine. "Casualties are expected," Fox said. "German artillery can range our positions. Some of you won't come back." Shilstone looked around. Artists, designers, theatre people. They had run 19 operations. Lost no one.
Viersen would break that record. No one has to volunteer. No one moved. 3 days to prepare.
3 days to create their masterpiece. The convoy rolled in after dark on March 17th. Artillery rumbled in the distance. Rhine crossing was 24 hours away. They had 1 night to create 2 divisions. Work began immediately.
Inflatables position.
Engineers creating physical evidence. Sound trucks moving into position. Radio operators preparing transmission schedules. Shilstone's team inflated and positioned Sherman tanks in staging areas visible to German observation across the Rhine. Each tank properly oriented, spaced, camouflaged, close enough to suggest concentrated force, far enough to avoid artificial patterns. First German shell landed at 2200 hours, 200 yards away. He kept working, more shells, harassing fire. Germans fishing. When dawn came and reconnaissance aircraft made their runs, the fishing would end. Germans would see the massive force. Shelling would become concentrated and deadly. "How long until dawn?" Dahl asked. Shilstone checked his watch. 5 hours. They had completed 10% of the deception. They needed speed and perfection simultaneously. More shells. Closer. One landed 75 yards away. Shilstone felt the concussion in his chest. An inflatable truck 20 yards away developed a shrapnel tear. It deflated slowly. "Replace it," Shilstone ordered. They worked through the night.
Shell after shell.
Germans increasing fire rate. They knew something was happening, but not what. Dawn would tell them. At 0400, with 90 minutes until first light, Shilstone finished the last Sherman. His team had positioned 127 inflatable tanks. Other teams had deployed hundreds of trucks, artillery, support vehicles. Sound trucks broadcast river crossing recordings. Radio operators transmitted fake division traffic. From above, through reconnaissance cameras, it would look exactly like 2 divisions preparing to force a Rhine crossing, if Germans believed it. Shilstone found a foxhole and waited for dawn. Around him, the Ghost Army's greatest illusion was complete. 600 inflatable vehicles representing 15,000 Phantom soldiers with 300 Phantom tanks.
An entire army made of rubber and lies, Shelling continued.
Every shell falling here was a shell not falling 15 miles south, where real soldiers prepared to cross. Dawn broke. Aircraft engines. High altitude. German reconnaissance. He stayed in his foxhole. Above him, photographers were capturing images that would change the battle. Hauptmann Ernst Böhmer of Wehrmacht Intelligence studied reconnaissance photographs from the morning flight. His office was in a command bunker 12 miles east of the Rhine. The photographs showed what he had suspected: Americans preparing a major Rhine crossing. 2 complete divisions staged north of Viersen. Sherman tanks in assembly areas, artillery batteries, supply dumps, communications installations.
Bridge equipment visible in several images. He calculated force strengths.
2 divisions, perhaps 30,000 men, with armor and artillery, a corps-level operation. The Americans were committing substantial resources to this crossing point. But something bothered him. The positioning was almost too perfect, too visible. Americans usually worked harder to conceal assembly areas from aerial reconnaissance. He studied the photographs more carefully. The shadows were correct. The vehicle spacing followed American doctrine. The camouflage patterns matched standard procedures. Communications antennas in proper locations for division headquarters. Supply dump layouts consistent with armor division logistics. Everything was right. So why did it feel wrong? Böhmer shook his head. Professional paranoia. Sometimes intelligence analysis made you see patterns that didn't exist. The evidence was clear. 2 American divisions were preparing to cross near Viersen. He drafted his report and sent it to Corps Intelligence. Within 2 hours, German commanders were repositioning forces to counter the expected attack. Reserves shifted north. Artillery batteries registered on American assembly areas. Anti-tank teams positioned along expected crossing points. 15 miles south, near Wesel, the real 9th Army prepared to cross the Rhine against lighter opposition than expected. The Ghost Army maintained deception for 6 days. German artillery pounded their positions continuously. 3 men were wounded by shrapnel.
1 half-track destroyed.
Dozens of inflatables damaged and repaired. They held the illusion. German reconnaissance continued photographing. German intelligence continued reporting 2 American divisions near Viersen. On March 24th, the 9th Army crossed the Rhine at Wesel. The assault went better than expected. German forces were dispersed, reserves malpositioned. By evening, Americans had established a bridgehead on the eastern bank. Casualties were significant but lower than anticipated. The crossing, one of the final obstacles between Allied forces and Germany's heart, had been forced successfully. That night, the Ghost Army packed and disappeared. 2 divisions vanished overnight. By dawn March 25th, assembly areas were empty. Böhmer studied new reconnaissance photographs. His coffee sat untouched, growing cold. The American divisions near Viersen had vanished.
Every vehicle, every installation, overnight. 2 complete divisions, 30,000 men, 300 tanks gone. Impossible. He grabbed earlier photographs, comparing them.
Yesterday, massive American force preparing to cross. Today, empty fields. His phone rang. Corps Intelligence. The Americans had crossed at Wesel, not Viersen. They were already 10 miles into Germany. The main effort had been 15 miles south. The Viersen force had been... Böhmer looked again at yesterday's photographs. 2 complete divisions. Thousands of vehicles photographed from multiple angles over 6 days.
All of it. What?
His hands shook as understanding hit him. They were never there. Every vehicle, every tank, every installation he had analyzed, reported, caused reserves to be repositioned. None of it had been real. The Americans had created a phantom army. They had fooled German intelligence for 6 days with what? Somehow made German reconnaissance photograph divisions that didn't exist. Mein Gott, he whispered. He thought about the reports he had written with such confidence, the force calculations, the threat assessments. German commanders had made decisions based on his analysis. Reserves had been positioned to counter an attack that was never coming. While German forces watched a ghost army near Viersen, real American soldiers had crossed the Rhine with lighter resistance. Böhmer looked at the photographs one more time. Perfect shadows, correct vehicle spacing, proper communications layout. Everything had been right, and it had all been a lie. How?
How had they done it?
And more terrifying, how many times before had German intelligence been looking at phantoms? He picked up the phone to report this to his superiors. His career was likely over. But that wasn't what bothered him. What bothered him was the elegance of it. The Americans had created a work of art, and German intelligence had hung it in a gallery. The Ghost Army conducted 2 more small operations in April as Allied forces drove into Germany. Both were minor supporting advances that were succeeding regardless. The war was ending. The Ghost Army's capabilities were becoming superfluous. May 7th, 1945, Germany surrendered. The war in Europe was over. The Ghost Army was deactivated quietly. Men were instructed to maintain secrecy. Official cover story, Headquarters Support Unit. Classified documents sealed. Inflatable equipment destroyed or stored in warehouses to deteriorate. Shilstone returned to New York and resumed designing window displays. He never told anyone what he had actually done. The secret remained classified for 50 years. When the Ghost Army was declassified in 1996, Arthur Shilstone was 78. At his first reunion, where veterans could openly discuss their service, someone asked, "Do you think it mattered? Did we actually save lives?" Shilstone thought about the Rhine crossing. German artillery pounding rubber tanks while real soldiers crossed 15 miles south. Reconnaissance photographs showing phantom divisions. German reserves positioned against attacks that never came. Every German soldier positioned against us was one less shooting at real Americans. Every shell that hit an inflatable tank didn't hit a real soldier. Yes, it mattered. In 2024, the 3 surviving Ghost Army members received the Congressional Gold Medal. The citation credited them with conducting more than 20 battlefield deceptions that saved thousands of American lives. By then, Shilstone was gone. He died in 2001, having lived most of his life unable to discuss the strangest chapter. His wartime paintings, watercolors, and sketches of French and German landscapes, some including inflatable tanks if you looked carefully, hung in his family's homes. The Ghost Army proved creativity could be a weapon. That illusion, properly executed, could achieve strategic effects. That artists and designers could save thousands of lives without firing a shot. A museum at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, displays one of the few surviving inflatable Sherman tanks from the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops. It sits in a glass case, preserved. Visitors read the placard. Some understand immediately.
Others struggle with the concept.
An entire military unit built around illusion?
Artists as soldiers?
Fake tanks that fooled German intelligence? But there it is. A rubber balloon that once convinced the Wehrmacht it was 33 tons of steel. A lie that saved lives.
A ghost that changed history. The tank is deflated now, collapsed and flat.
Displayed alongside photographs showing it inflated and positioned in a French field. Looking for all the world like a real Sherman preparing for combat, it weighs 85 pounds. For 6 days in March 1945, it helped protect thousands of American soldiers crossing the Rhine. It never fired a shot.
Never had an engine.
Was never anything but rubber and air, and it changed the world.